Authorization required.
Couch Warrior.
Voice recognition authorized. Access granted.
Welcome, dear viewers, to Couch Warrior TV on YouTube. I am the Couch Warrior, and you are watching an Aranis Arcana Lounge update. I thought it was about time we had an episode of the Lounge. There's a couple reasons for that. There was a great suggestion from a gentleman who is a longtime viewer of the Aranis Arcana series. His handle is JY, and he suggested that I go through Fleet's loadout. It has been a while since we've talked about Fleet's loadout, so we're going to take an in-depth look at the equipment that Fleet is currently sporting in the story, and we are also going to take this opportunity to kind of go over some other things, specifically skills. We're going to cover spells in detail, the spells that I tend to be using right now as part of the story and as part of this character type. And so we're going to go over all these little details and kind of see where we're at. Set a baseline. Just a couple of things before we start on that, however. I hope that those of you in America here who are celebrating the holiday of Thanksgiving have a good one that is coming up. The reason I mention that is I will not be putting out a new episode of Aranis Arcana this coming weekend. I will be spending the holiday probably eating too much and watching American-style football. So, with that, let's move forward. I thought it'd be a good idea to do this. It was a great suggestion, and it has been a while since we had an update. There have been several level advancements in Act 3, and recently in the last few episodes we have been acquiring levels pretty rapidly. So here we are in the vault. This is kind of a look at what we've got so far. I've added some new things here to our armor gallery. We can see the various phases of Fleet's history. Now, of course, I have added the Shadow Ranger here, right next to our favorite, the Evil Mastermind armor. And now, of course, we have the Contractor armor, which for us is doubling as Deathbrand. If you remember, I have converted the Contractor armor mod for Deathbrand. Right now, Fleet is just wearing something casual. This is the Silencer's vestments, not to be confused with the Silencer's light armor that we were wearing many episodes ago, which is featured here in this gallery. This is just kind of, the vestments are basically robes, so it's light, it's casual, something for him to wear while his armor is on display. So we'll take the hood off. There is Fleet. That is what he looks like currently. Now, I have introduced a mod. I tested it extensively. I'm not a player who's particularly big on a lot of the mods that modify the body types, but I did think the hair needed a touch-up, so I did find a mod that tested very well, that kind of smooths out the hair a little bit. So Fleet is featuring that right now. What I'm showing you here is I'm just starting to go through the equipment inventory, starting with armor. This is a necklace that Fleet wears a lot. The necklace itself you'll probably recognize. It's a modified version of a necklace featured in the vanilla Skyrim. However, I was able to obtain this version of it through the Black Sacrament mod, and I have enchanted it myself to boost my archery abilities. The same with this ring. This ring looks very similar to a typical silver and ruby ring, but it features a skull cut ruby. That also comes from Black Sacrament, and I have enchanted that to fortify marksman. So each of these items is giving me a respectable 20% boost. My enchantment levels have gone up since I made most of these items, so I could remake them and probably get much better enchantments. The herding equipment, of course, that comes with a mod that we've been using to locate our horses in a horse camp. That is basically always on me. I just never know when I'm going to need that. And it does give me a boost as well on my carry capacity. Now I'm kind of running through. The last time that I went up a level, I acquired... Well, the last 2 times I went up a level, I've acquired perks in enchanting, and I basically made myself an entirely new set of smithing gear. All of my smithing gear is at 20% now. I have not made additional smithing gear since having acquired the 5th and final enchanting perk, so I'm going to have to do that at some point. I'm sort of holding off because there are a couple of perks coming up that will benefit also that gear. So I'm probably going to wait a couple of levels before I go to the trouble of making a whole new set of gear. Right now I'm at 20% on all of those items, and I have not remade any of my alchemy gear. So that I'll have to do as well, and before I go to all the trouble of making all those pieces again, I think I should get a couple more levels under my belt and a couple more perks in enchanting, and that'll give me a significant boost. So we're just kind of running through the stuff here. This is the wolfskin cloak that Fleet wears. Here's a wolfskin hood. I've never done anything special with the hood. He doesn't actually wear it that often. A lot of the outfits that Fleet wears already feature a hood, but I kind of like the look of this. This comes from the Winter is Coming mod. Both of those items, the cloak and the hood. I have acquired through the vanilla game a ring of peerless wielding. That gives me a nice 40% bump. Now, this is a ring that I only wear when I'm dual wielding the swords, which actually hasn't been that often, and I've been getting questions about that. People have been asking, Couch Warrior, how come you're not using the swords? Well, there's a couple reasons for that. Obviously, we have been an assassin all along, and going to the swords is something that Fleet started focusing on late in the game. So we are really only at level 53 in one-handed, which means that there is a good chance in a pitch battle with swords that we may not come out on top. So I've been reserving some of the sword play for later levels when we get to that point where we're able to acquire more perks and, frankly, get our enchanting and smithing to a point where we can increase our defensive capabilities through armor. So that is part of the plan. Now the blade's shield here, it's a blade style shield, but it is the texture on it is a texture that I made myself. Fleet does have this in his inventory almost all the time. It's fairly weighty, takes up space, but it has a frost resistance enchant, which I put on there myself, and the main reason that I keep it is primarily for dragon battles. Now here's the piece that I'm really loving a lot, and will feature prominently in Chapter 15, Part 1, Episode 94, the Blade of Dibella. It is probably the most gorgeous blade, I feel, that is available in the Jace's sword package. And I gotta believe it's one of the most beautiful weapons that you're going to find in a mod, period. That's just my opinion. It's just so elegant and gorgeous and seems like the perfect assassin weapon. A long, slender blade, similar to a stiletto, but razor sharp. It's just gorgeous. And I think it does a little bit higher than normal base damage. It does about 24 base damage. Now, of course, I haven't enchanted this weapon. However, I have smithed it up as much as I can at the moment. And it benefits from steel smithing. Does require some additional items to craft it. It was crafted using steel and corundum both. The other thing that is seemingly always in my inventory are these beautiful Sorrow katanas. I created one while in Solstheim. If you remember, we left one here in the vault before traveling to Solstheim. I ended up creating another one in Solstheim and stopped using the Akaviri sabers. I just love this too much. And the thing that's really great about the Sorrow katanas is that the maker of these, Insanity, he has actually created left-hand meshes for these, which means that, as I'm doing here, I can actually sheathe the sword over the left shoulder. You'll notice that a lot of the modded swords, you can't do that. So if you basically put one in the left and one in the right, you will not see an actual sword sheathed on your back to the left, which I just hate. I hate it when, he reaches his arm up, the left hand, seemingly pulling at air because nothing's there, and suddenly a sword pops into his hand. For me, it's an immersion thing. So the Sorrow katanas are beautiful in that way. It also works on the Sorrow tantos. And with this mod, you can get these swords in 4 different colors. I think it's black, brown, blue, and red. What we've done so far is really just crafted black swords and a red tanto. Now I'm going to go over here. On one of these placards, I've got the Sorrow katana that we left here when we went to Solstheim. I'm going to go and grab that, and we'll take a look at what I'm talking about here. In order to get the dual sheath to work, I've talked about this in the past, it is quite involved. The first thing you need to do is have a modified skeleton mod. The modified skeleton mod allows you to basically... having a little trouble grabbing it here. That is what allows you to relocate items on your body, and when you run that mod for the first time, you get several options as to where you want to locate things. So that's what allows you to have 2 swords. As long as the sword that you're wielding has a left-hand mesh, it'll work. Now, in addition to that, you also need a mod that creates the animation that shows him reaching up for a weapon on the left. What I use primarily is a left-hand sword and dagger combination. So Fleet will actually draw a dagger on the right or left from his hip, and a sword on the right and left from his back, because of these animations and the skeleton I'm using. Now here's the 2 swords. They're absolutely matching. The lighting is a little bit different here, so they look different, but they absolutely match. So you can see 2 swords. Now the one thing that it doesn't do that's difficult to see from this angle, but you can see in some angles, is that the sword in the left-hand side is actually being held by the character upside down. Apparently there is no fix for that. I don't know what the issue is. But it is a beautiful look. Now, of course, actually, you know what? I misspoke there. I have the animation I have is a one hand on the back and one hip draw. So he's always going to go with one hand to the hip, and that's always going to be the dagger, but it can switch left or right, and he's always going to go one hand to the shoulder. So it's a dual wielding animation, but it's dual wielding for dagger and sword. There's a separate animation or a different animation that you need to get if you want to do 2 swords, where he draws both hands to the shoulders left and right. I've chosen right now to be dual wielding dagger and sword, so that's why we're seeing him reach to the hip and then up over the shoulder. You can see my quick links here. Bend the Shadows is always on my list. Typically it's bow 1, dagger 2, and then something like Bend the Shadows or Ghost Walk in position 3. Now, going through the spells in the alteration category, of course, Featherfall is the one that I have hotkeyed. It's the one that I use the most. Candlelight would be a close second. But in the illusion category, this is where we're doing a lot of different things. Bend the Shadows is a favorite. You notice that when you read the description, it will also do some additional fancy things if I've learned invisibility. I have not learned invisibility yet. I'm not exactly sure if I'm high enough level to. I've never attempted it. But what it does is automatically invokes invisibility when you use Bend the Shadows spell. Now, Blur, this is one I use a lot, but I don't talk about a lot. It's my defensive spell. Fleet needs defense. We are very, very low levels in light armor, and we don't use things like, Stone Skin or any of those spells. Blur is our defensive capability. So if we take a look here at the illusion tree, where is it? There, okay. We've done a lot of work in illusion. We're not super high level, 61, but we've acquired, I think, as many perks as we can in this area so far. Invisibility would be a nice addition to our loadout. The nice thing about that, of course, is when combined with Bend the Shadows, which we use a lot, it becomes kind of a passive capability. We don't have to invoke the invisibility. It just happens when we need it. So it's not another thing that we're going to have to add to the list of spells to cast. I keep my spell loadout very, very simple. I stick with some staples, and this is kind of in fitting with this kind of style of magic that we've created for ourselves we call Figment. Now, Dim Vision, I haven't used this a lot. It's basically like Poor Man's Invisibility. Rather than using invisibility, you can cast this on an opponent and make them slightly blind or make it more difficult for them to detect you. This one is a non-starter. I thought I might use it, but given how high a level we are in stealth now, it really hasn't been necessary. Some of the other ones I have listed here are ones that I thought would be cool to try, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. This spreads out your healing capability a little bit. The Empathic Link. This is kind of a neat one where anybody who's doing damage to you takes 125% of that damage back. Evil Twin. This is a good one for distractions, creating distractions. It only lasts 8 seconds, but a lot of times that's all you need in order to get in, for that kill or to scoot through the room without being seen. Forked Tongue, haven't used that. Fury, we have used Fury a little bit. Ghost Walk, of course, a staple, and Ghost Walk will feature prominently in the next episode. I'm pretty excited about that. Illusory Weight, this one we can cast on a person and they basically, their health is reduced for 10 seconds or something like that. It's enough for us to get in there and do an attack. And, of course, Swap. Swap is always fun. Swap is the spell that we use to dump Miravel down in that pit so we could have our conversation with her. And I believe that was Chapter 14, Episode, or Part 1. So... And then, of course, Fast Healing. I use Fast Healing quite a bit. People have begun to notice that I tend to go to the spells rather than the potions, so I've been accumulating potions at an alarming rate, encumbering myself with them, as a matter of fact. I like using spells. I like the idea of using spells. Potions, for some reason, I don't hotkey them. I just don't go to them. It's not that I don't like potions or think they're awesome. It's just I like the idea of having this base set of abilities that are spell based, that are the tools that we draw from, kind of our toolbox. So in the same way that we've got our weapons, we've got our spells, which are in our Figment style. They're defensive, they're health related, they're offensive. It's just a nice suite of things we've got going right now. So let's review Fleet's skills. Enchanting. We've got all 5 base levels in Enchanting. Now, in coming levels, the priority is going to be going up the center of this. We are very, very close, of course, to level 43 right now. If I went up 1 level in Smithing, that would be enough to bump us up. So Insightful Enchanter will be happening next, followed by Corpus Enchanter, and then eventually all the way up to extra effect. Fleet is kind of an assassination powerhouse right now, but when we get to that dual enchanting option, that is going to be tremendous for us. Now, smithing, this is one area where everybody knows, I think, that I've been conflicted. Obviously, I've not invested in anything here but steel smithing. However, the left-hand side of the smithing constellation provides some great things for us. In particular, if we can get up to glass smithing, this is where we can really increase our defensive capabilities. Many of the armors that we have selected as an assassin benefit from glass smithing. The silencer armor does. That's glass smithing, as well as the evil mastermind armor is also glass smithing. So there are a lot of benefits to getting to glass. It's just that we've got to go through a couple junk levels before we get there, and that's what usually causes me to hesitate. Blocking, of course, we use that a little bit, not too much. One-handed, this is another area where we're talking about investing. Again, we are only level 43 right now. This is an area where Fleet needs to train. We just flat out need to train if we're going to bring this up. Whoops. Back again. So, I think, we've done Savage Strike, which Savage Strike is kind of a necessity. We do a lot of power attacks as a dual wielder, so that's a nice one to have. Critical Charge is not necessary, but I love it, so I will be using Critical Charge at some point. It's just that we have other things we need to invest in right now. Again, when it comes to swordsmanship, Fleet is a late bloomer again, so eventually we'll want to get up to dual savagery, but right now our bread and butter is still in those assassination skills, the dagger and the bow, and until we kind of increase our level here in some of our defenses, we aren't going to be a super effective swordsman. That's why I kind of stay away from it unless it's special circumstances. Oh, the archery. We are almost level 100. Now, with Fleet, we've elected to go all 5 levels of Overdraw, Eagle Eye, no Steady Hand. I stayed away from the Steady Hand because I felt like I needed to save the perks. We got Power Shot and Quick Shot for speed. There are a number of things I would love to invest in here. I love the Ranger perk. The only problem I have with a Ranger perk, of course, is that I got to go through some junk perks to get to it. Hunter's Discipline, I don't need it. Critical Shot, I haven't seen a lot of benefit from that either. When you're using primarily a bound bow, Hunter's Discipline is just kind of ridiculous. But I do love the idea of doing dungeon crawls with the bow drawn, the rapid movement. It's a pretty fun way to play. It's just getting there is a problem. And of course, light armor, woefully neglected. Sneak. Now we're really starting to see the benefits of our decisions around stealth. We did not go for those initial levels in stealth, and you've probably noticed we do not really have any significant problems avoiding our opponents. We can sneak right past people even without wasting those last 4 perks in stealth. Silence, don't need it. And honestly, even Shadow Warrior. Shadow Warrior is kind of a fun one if you can get there. However, what I'm finding now is that simple spells like Ghost Walk really completely make Shadow Warrior unnecessary because I can achieve some of the same capabilities that Shadow Warrior affords you by using Ghost Walk, at least in combat. So, I don't believe we'll be investing anything more in Sneak going forward. Lockpicking, pretty standard stuff. Speech is one I love to invest in, but with this character, we just haven't gotten around to it. Alchemy, yes. 5 levels in Alchemy would be great. That's probably going to be a late game acquisition. And the only other thing I would invest in here is Benefactor. Fleet hasn't been a poisoning type guy. Of course, we'd have to go through this perk, Physician, before getting to Benefactor. But I could see Fleet really benefiting from Benefactor. That would just help improve the potions that we use to fortify smithing and help us make even better, nastier gear than what we already have. So before we wrap this up, it's worth taking a quick look at enchanting, just to take a look at the list of enchants that we've acquired so far. Some of the enchants on our list, of course, the Tribunal Mask, we got to look at that. Forgot to look at that earlier. We'll look at that after this. Some of these enchantments, and most of them, of course, are standard. But there's a couple specialized ones. Sabotage, of course. Sabotage is what gives us our double damage with our weapons, similar to what we would get from the Dark Brotherhood gloves. That perk simply allows us to put that enchantment on whatever gloves we want to, which I happen to like. I do like my custom gear. It makes me feel more connected to the character. So let's look at that Tribunal Mask and kind of go out on a creepy note, shall we? So the Tribunal Mask comes from a mod. I forget what it's called. Probably something having to do with Tribunal. I think if you go to Skyrim Nexus and look up Tribunal, you're going to get several mods having to do with these masks. This one is made of silver, and I have just kept it standard. It has the enchantment on it that comes with it when you acquire it, so it gives you a 20% buff on some resistances. Let's take a look here. Yeah, poison resistance, magic resistance, and frost resistance. That looks pretty nasty, and when we combine that with a hood, it's even better. Now, it uses the slot that would normally be occupied by a circlet, so you can't use just any hood with it. Whether or not you can use the mask with a hood depends on how the hood's constructed. So anything that you can wear with a circlet, you can wear with the mask. Well, that's it for this update, Warriors. I want to thank you for joining me. I hope you all have a great holiday, and I will see you with another episode of Aranis Arcana in 2 weeks' time as we lead in to the episode 100 finale and the end of Act 3.